Hey, thanks so much for clicking on the video. This was a great sit down fireside chat. It was the first one we've done. I hope to do many more. It's actually super enjoyable. Growing up, I always found that I had some of the best conversations that I've ever had sitting fireside. There's something about that that just disarms people and staring into that fire. We do get smoked out a little bit at some points, so it makes it kind of interesting, but it was a really great conversation. So again, this is our first fireside chat. Honored to have Jason Knott of Sway Hats sitting down with us, talking about his life, his early ambitions in being an entrepreneur, and how it's ultimately led him to the stage where he's at now with the Sway Hat Company. Thank you so much for clicking on it. I hope you enjoy.
And then for some random reason, another competitor popped up in Park City.
Okay.
And called Breathe Legal. And I remember the owner.
That's a lame name.
Yeah, I remember the owner called me. They had money though.
Well, yeah.
And
that makes up for a lot of stuff. Yeah, I guess. Marketing, right?
Yeah, you invest in yourself, you try it, you fail. It's okay. You're going to learn a shit ton along the way.
And the connections you make, obviously, right?
The connections you make. AI is crazy. It's going to change everything, obviously.
And it's happening so fast. Yeah. A lot of people are completely asleep as to what's happening.
Right. Well, and that's where I'm like, honestly, I feel like if you're not a business owner or thinking in that mindset, like, I don't know what's going to happen. What got me to progress forward was the chances I took on myself. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. And the quicker you make mistakes, the quicker you're going to learn. And don't be afraid to invest a little money in yourself. Just start. I think that's the biggest thing. Just start.
How's it going? Thanks again. Another episode of SGD. So today we're doing a little something different, a little fireside chat. Growing up my whole life, I think I had some of the best conversations I've ever had, sitting fireside, learning from different people. And tonight I was fortunate enough to convince Jason Knott, a budding entrepreneur, business owner, to come sit down tonight at this beautiful property out here in Peoria, Utah. And with that, I'll let Jason do a little introduction.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Eric. Yeah. This is the perfect environment for me to feel comfortable and having a conversation. Like, this is the most chill you can get. So I love it.
Yeah. We met that whole list of demands. So.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
No, we're very much on the same page with it for sure.
Awesome. Yeah. So a little, I guess, background about me. It's kind of hard. I could take up the whole podcast, just going through all the stuff I've kind of done.
Well, let's start off with the simple stuff.
Yeah.
So, are you originally from the area? Are you originally from Utah?
Yeah. I grew up in Murray since I was 6 years old.
Cool.
Before that, it was West Jordan. So I'm still in Murray.
Okay.
It locked me in. So
yeah. What kind of family you got? You got a bunch of brothers, sisters, siblings?
I have one sister, one older sister. She's about 3 years older than me.
Okay.
And she went off and did the nursing thing. And
nice.
I was always kind of inspired by entrepreneurs and business owners. And
obviously, we'll find out soon enough where you ended up. But yeah.
Yeah. So that was kind of my passion, I guess. And so grew up in Utah. Went to Murray High School, went to Westminster College, and that's kind of where I made a lot of the connections I utilize now. It was just a lot of friend groups, and I worked there for 10 years as well. So I started school there, pretty expensive school, and then, got hired on full time, and so I got free tuition.
Okay.
But it extended the bachelor degree to about 6 years. But then I got locked in there for like 10 years,
All right.
Super comfortable place to work. And, honestly, it was just a fun crew to work with, and they supported my entrepreneurship journeys throughout the process too.
Well, that's good. I mean, it's tough when you get comfortable somewhere and you get in a position to, like you said, where you feel comfortable, you feel good, you feel at home. It's tough to get out of that.
Yeah, it really is, and I think that was a big part of it too. Like, just recently I was thinking, I was making like 50 grand a year, and going back to those times, like, I felt rich, and it was very low key, but I always had a side hustle and trying something, but the college supported that too. And, just thinking about like where I've came throughout that, and how my wife, the same way. We met at Westminster College.
Oh, okay. And you've been together for a while then.
Yeah. So we've been married 9 years, and we were dating like 3 or 4 years before that. And I think, that's what kind of makes it easy too. I think that was probably the biggest challenge I'll ever see in my life is landing that one. Like she was a little bit above my league, and so everything else is cherry on top. So it kind of feels a little risk.
Well, you said something interesting. You said that you felt rich.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you? What did that mean to you then when you were making $50,000 a year, going through that process and had the opportunity for these challenges versus what you're doing now?
Yeah, I think I just had a lot of freedom to one, excel at my job and kind of go above and beyond and be appreciated for that.
What were you doing there?
I was a few different positions. So I started out in the library as a web designer. So I was doing the library website, and that was the first full-time position. And it was back in like 2008 when, they were giving mortgages to everybody. And so I got a house. They
were giving 5 mortgages to ladies who were working on poles. Yeah, no, I heard all that with cash in hand, right?
It was interesting. I mean, I was making, I think at that time, like $29,000 a year.
Okay.
And managed to get a mortgage. And my dad kind of talked me into it. And I was thinking like, okay. And my sister, who had graduated from the same college and went into the nursing program, so she was moving to Mesa, Arizona, and she had just bought the house. And I remember she bought it for like $140,000 and lived there for a year, and then was going to sell it, and it had already appreciated quite a bit.
Yeah.
And
this was still this was 2008.
This was like she bought it in 2007.
2007. Okay.
And then my option came up in 2008, where I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. And my dad kind of talked to me about it, and like that, the house is kind of the best investment you can make.
Yeah.
And then, so I was kind of, working through it, and I had access to a ton of roommates, being in college, and everybody wanted their own place. And so I kind of did it, but my sister was selling it for like 175 or 180 at the time. And so I was like, 1 year and I got to pay that much extra, like what the heck? Where's the family discount? And, but I ended up doing it, and that was, after the crash, it was kind of like, what the hell did I just do? I think I got the valuation. It was like 130, and I was pissed at that time, but it was like, you don't really care. You have roommates. I think the mortgage is $1,200, and each roommate paying $350, $400. Okay. And so got 4 roommates, made it through it, figured I was paying the same amount to rent a place anyway.
Yeah.
And now, like, I still own that property.
Okay.
And it's a rental.
This is out in Arizona?
No, this is in Murray.
Oh, okay. So this is in Murray. Okay.
Yeah.
I was getting a little tripped up there.
Yeah. So it just kind of worked out, I was like, okay, that's the first kind of experience. If you can weather the storms, which like will always happen in certain industries too.
Yeah.
And so don't get out too quick. It was kind of my lesson there. And luckily I didn't have to learn that the hard way. But that's been...
Fortunately, you were able to have roommates. You had some people who were helping subsidize that mortgage, right?
Yeah. And then, working full-time at Westminster, you start to get promotions, and they were really good about that. Like every year or two, it seemed like I got a promotion or a bump to a different job. And so I kind of went through different scenarios there. And then I think my last job at Westminster was I was a database analyst. So I was in their IT department.
Okay.
And yeah, I just had a lot of freedom to work on stuff. And then I started a company there, which was BreathAdvisor. So it was a breathalyzer kiosk that would request a cab for you.
What?
And so it was a fun project. And
So you can't just throw that out there. Take me through this. So what was the thought? What was the idea? So it was obviously to help with preventing DUI or drunk driving.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it was like a self check-in kind of deal. And if you did blow over a certain amount, then it said, okay, you need a taxi.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it would say if you registered anything, we recommend you get a cab, but we would have the line for the legal limit. So 0.08.
Okay.
But yeah, that was like kind of the first deal. And I was in business classes at the time too. And so they ran an entrepreneurship competition.
Okay.
So that was kind of my business plan that I put together and entered it in. I didn't get placed in top 3, so I didn't get a cash prize or anything. But
What did win? What were some of the top ideas?
it was, I remember one.
Because I would remember that. I would 100% remember that. If I had come up with a breathalyzer thing and I didn't get in the top 3.
I mean, I was kind of thinking, and I was nervous I'd get it. So I like to do things. I don't really want recognition or like to be put center stage, because like the reality is I don't know what the hell I'm doing, and I don't really like, it's just part of the process. So I don't, like, in my mind, deserve that or want that attention, like, so I remember being like super nervous. I had Libby, who I'm dating at the time, now my wife, at the awards dinner, and I'm thinking, shit, like if I win, I have to go up there and like talk to everybody, and like say something.
Yeah.
And, I remember being relieved that I didn't win, but also kind of pissed. And you have to go in and pitch your business. And that was kind of a nerve-wracking thing, to go to a boardroom, pitch the idea and the business plan. And, we had it pretty dialed, I thought. But yeah, we didn't win. I remember the company that won was a sock company that like had little beads in it, massage your feet. And so yeah, it was cool. Yeah, I liked it.
I could see that. Yeah. I'm sure it's on like Temu right now or something like that. Right?
I haven't seen it. Like I kind of checked in on it, and it's not around anymore, but it was a good idea. It was like for people, wearing work shoes all the time and walking around all the time, and it would kind of like, I guess keep the blood flowing or something. Yeah. So, but I went forward with it anyway. And I remember like recruiting a couple of people, because at the time it's just me, and I was sourcing kiosks in China. And so figuring that out while I'm at Westminster too, so I'm kind of doing that. But again, you have like kind of freedom to, I mean, there's certain jobs where you can kind of kick ass and do it in a couple hours. Okay. So you have some free time.
Yeah. So that was a pretty valuable skill, though. I mean, as far as resourcing and working with distributors or working with manufacturers over in China, right? A lot of people are intimidated to do that. Obviously, they have a different schedule and stuff, but there's so many things that branch. Obviously, China produces so many goods, right? And so there's so many things once you get comfortable with that you can do with that.
Yeah, and I don't know if you're ever comfortable with it, but it's like really it's a market, and the whole world is a market, and there's certain things that China's really good at, and certain things that we're really good at, and so utilize everybody to their strengths, and it's like you can do the same thing with. I mean, I remember kind of exploring some options in the U.S., and it was just unfeasible to even start, even to test the, your MVP, your minimum viable product, test the market. So I had, well, I guess I kind of missed out on what spurred the whole idea. And I went to a bar one time. I'll just make it real short.
That's all right. We got plenty of time.
I didn't want to go out drinking this one night with my friends, and they convinced me to go out, and a couple girls were with them. And so we went to a place that's called the Canyon Inn in Cottonwood Heights. Okay. And so I went there. I remember I had like a vodka Red Bull, and then we shared a pitcher of beer or something. So I think I'm good, and I'm really cautious about that, because I'm like, that's the last thing you would want.
Sure. Yeah.
But I did drink. And so I remember going out the parking lot and like just doing my own stuff, just like walking the line, thinking like just making sure. And I felt fine, but I'm just always scared when I'm drinking.
Yeah.
And then I remember, and it wasn't my car that they had driven over. I was driving somebody else's car, because I didn't plan on going out, didn't plan on having to drive home.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get home, and these guys wanted to go. And so I was like, all right, let's go. And I pulled out of Canyon Inn, and immediately a cop came out from behind the bushes and pulled up behind me. And so I'm like, oh shit.
Well,
I was just like scared. Yeah. And it was like, they were trying to, later I got more information, because Canyon Inn was one of my first customers. Ooh. And they were trying to close them out so they could buy the property. And so they had a lot of Cottonwood Heights. Like, I don't know anything. Like, this is what I heard.
Yeah.
But I mean, I saw it. Like, he came right out. He was watching me.
Well, I've experienced stuff like that too, in particular with liquor license and different city councils. Back where I went to college, I was a door guy, and they pursued actually charges against me, and I was found to be innocent, and it was dismissed. It took a year to go through the process.
Yeah.
And what we found out come through it was that they were really against some zoning regulation and disagreement about payment. And so they were trying to get points on his license to do damage so he couldn't open up another place.
Oh, interesting.
And
Yeah.
I was the sacrificial lamb.
Yeah. That happened. And pulled in behind me, and I was really nervous at that point. And then I remember the turn light turning green, and I did, like, it was a stupid move. Like, I went before the other cars, like, oncoming, but they were kind of stationary. And then in my mind, I'm panicking, thinking it was a green turn light, and it was fine. Like, they were slow or whatever. It wasn't a big deal, but it was enough for them to pull me over. And he pulled me over and, you know, had me get out of the car, do the whole DUI test. And then he, you know, at the end of it has you blow on the breathalyzer, and I blew, and it was 0.089 or 0.081 was the first time.
Okay.
So just barely over. And then even the cop, he kind of walked away, and he's like, all right, try it again. And then it was 0.89. So it's higher. Like, oh my gosh. And at that point I was just like, I'm done. Like, this is it. And the cop said, he came back and was like, okay, so not convinced that you can operate this vehicle, so park this fucking car at that gas station and get a cab.
Okay.
And so he followed me over to the gas station. It was huge, man. And then he waved me over again and just like, this is how many DUIs I've given out tonight. And he had like 6 clipboards in there. And I was just like, thank you so much. You know, like, I'm so sorry. Like, and I got a cab.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was like, okay, I looked up how much a DUI costs. And it's like $10,000. Like, that would have been horrible. And then license or whatever. So at that point, that was my first kind of like, okay, take $10,000 and, you know, explore that idea. Cause I was already kind of like getting into that a little bit, like in the entrepreneurship program. But I was thinking, there's so many friends of mine too that don't know how drunk they are. And especially with vodka Red Bull, like the Red Bull, I mean, that was like the drink back then.
Yeah. It gives you a ton of energy.
Yeah. And you feel fine.
And your breath is like wicked bad.
Yeah. But you'd feel all right. You'd feel kind of alert, but you're going to blow over legal limit, and you're probably not all right, but it would kind of give you that illusion too. So, that's where I was like, okay, you know, you almost had that thing happen. That would have cost you $10,000. So I bought a breathalyzer that was like law enforcement grade. It was like $800, you know, and again, like, I'm not making a ton of money. It was a big risk for me. So I was like, I want to buy the breathalyzer and figure out how to integrate it with an app or a program. And so I got that, and then just started down the path. And, you know, it was like,
again, what year was this though? About
probably like 2010 or 11.
Okay. So it wasn't, I mean, apps were pretty well known, people pretty frequent, but it wasn't like there was an app for everything.
Well,
like
yeah, no, at the time it was like Redbox was kiosks that you're familiar with that you go to, you rent movies. And so that's what I kind of envisioned in my mind. It's a kiosk where at the bar where you can, you know, check yourself. There you go. And so I built a concept where I had the breathalyzer hooked up to a laptop, and it was like old school, you know, I mean, the breathalyzer, it's like green screen, and then it was like RS-232 cable that plugged into the laptop, and had to get adapters to it, and then had to kind of learn how to interface with something like that. And it's just fun. Like, you're learning something and kind of exploring it. And then I built it's basically a website that interacted with the breathalyzer. And so I remember kind of doing that and showing some people at the school. And then one of them referred me to a lawyer to see if there's any like patentable items or anything like that. Or like, what can I do to kind of secure this? And it was a little early for that. Like, you know, I hadn't tested the market or anything. And then I went and met with the lawyers, and like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Again.
So you're walking me down this pathway. I'm like, where did you even get like the idea at this age to even think that you could be doing this?
Yeah, I think that's my problem, is like, I'm dumb enough to think I can on a lot of these things, but it gives me enough motivation to pursue it. And that's, everything is just taking the next step and just small steps. And, you know, you don't know if you're going to get there, but $800 investment to try. It's like, people have no problem spending $50,000 a year, $100,000 a year, whatever it is on tuition,
Yeah.
but they won't invest in themselves on a risk like that, where you're going to learn something and it's going to be interesting. That's worst case scenario. And you're going to lose, your $800 or whatever it is at that time. $800 is significant, but it's not like make or break. And, so yeah, that's how I kind of started it. And then meeting with the lawyers, I'm nervous as shit. And I'm going in there, and one of the lawyers was Dumpke. And at Westminster College, we have Dumpke field, so it's like, oh, fuck, I'm getting in there. I have a problem too. I get in closed rooms and I'll start sweating, man. I'll just But I met with them. They were awesome. And then, it was kind of like, well, we've started this kind of fund and this is interesting. Like, let's explore that. And so they invested $30,000. And so that was like amazing.
Wait. So you went from going in to seek advice.
Sorry. Yeah. I try and cut it shorter, but like, if you want to dig in, then you let me know. So it's perfect.
Yeah. So you went in, had an interest in potentially looking at patents. And then they said, not only do you have, let's not worry about the patent. We're more interested in what you're doing here. We want to get involved.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, I didn't really know what the scenario would be, but I had it was like a red box kiosk, essentially, like a big button, like begin breath test. And then, it had like coupon code and request a cab. And so I had the demo. The request cab didn't work, at the time, but it was enough to go through. I remember I had the big button and I did a Bud Light football helmet next to it. So they kind of see, the sponsorship. I can't remember if I had any inkling that they would be interested in investing. But I do remember like the football helmet and just like a concept of what it could be.
Okay.
And, I showed them, and then, they started that conversation, and I'm like, oh shit, like, what does that mean?
Yeah. And
then they kind of, that was a learning experience, talking to me about a convertible note and what that means exactly. And, so they gave me a check for $30,000. It wasn't that day.
Yeah.
But it was like, okay, that started the conversation. And then, kind of got some funds going there. And then, through Westminster as well, it was like, here's all these like, entrepreneurial meetups and conferences. And so we went to one. Well, I'm jumping ahead again because it's so far long ago too. I like kind of skipped some parts, but at that point, I think my parents gave me $5,000 to be like, okay, try it.
Yeah.
And that was enough to order in the initial kiosk.
Okay.
So it was like $2,000 from China. This thing weighs 80 pounds. It's like, it's going to be a wall mounted thing.
Okay, cool.
But,
I was imagining you have like an old school arcade cabinet that you convert.
Well, that was some of the concepts too, is, like there was floor standing kiosks. There was, options for wall mounted. I kind of explained, to the supplier I was talking to what I wanted. I'm going to be in a bar. So
we're getting smoked out a little bit.
But I explained the concept to the manufacturer, and this is, they speak English.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm learning Mandarin or anything,
Sure.
But it was fine. And then I kind of told them the concept, and you always play like you're a little bigger than you are, I mean, especially working with a supplier, they want to know, hey, this has potential to be a big customer. And
how old were you again at this point?
Probably like 25.
Yeah. Where do you get the goleons to act like that? Where does that come from?
I don't know. I think,
was it just really, did you have just such a drive to do this, or did you have, we skipped over like childhood. We're like, boom, childhood. Okay. Boom. I'm in college doing this. Was there someone that you emulated in life, or like an uncle or father or some type of figure that you learned some of these lessons? Because it seems like you did start with a little bit of advantage as far as like your confidence, or not even confidence. It was just like willingness, right? Because you seemed like you were almost unconfident and not really as sure of yourself, but in the same regard, you just kept moving forward and continuing with it.
Yeah. I think from like an early age too, it was like my parents didn't make a ton of money. My mom, when I was growing up, didn't work, and my dad worked. he was a carpenter for the school district, and knowing like what he made, like I still felt like a spoiled kid on a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But we were not by any, I don't know how they made it work, but they're really good budgeting and doing all these things, and coupon clipping and all that. And so that kind of, it was like, if I wanted a big thing, like I remember I wanted a paintball gun.
Okay.
And so I was like, okay, you start figuring out paintball gun costs $250. What could I do to earn that money? And it was mow lawns, so it's like, I'm going to go knock on doors and see if I can mow anybody's lawn for $10. And, I only have to mow 25 lawns to do that, and I can get my paintball gun. And so that's kind of the start of it too. Then you get rewarded. You got the reward, got my paintball gun.
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, you kind of, I guess, learn that motion a little bit. And so that's like where, you don't really know what you're doing. You're too young to get a job, but you can do something like that. Like that's.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because just so many times I've heard, again, I listen to a ton of podcasts and a lot of reviews and try to absorb these skills or these natural abilities that some people just seem to resonate with or have. And I hear that over and over again, that it was like literally like the kid with the lemonade stand, or the kid mowing lawns, and how that built the character and determination later on in life that converted into a lot of successful people.
Well, it's probably not as you tell your dog to sit, you give him a treat. It's kind of like, I'm like, shit, I'm the dog. Like, I got a treat after I did a certain action.
Yeah.
And so you kind of get that, and that's kind of what, I guess, spurred it. But then I had some other things too, like while I was in high school, where I was playing a game called EverQuest. It's like a nerdy game. I remember my parents. Yeah, I remember my dad just being like, I'm not religious or anything. My parents have never been religious, and growing up in Utah, that was always interesting. But
you're surrounded by it.
Yeah. And so my best friend was Mormon, and just like it was interesting. But come high school, I wasn't like a full on nerd, but I was, I guess, kind of nerdy. Like I was into the nerd stuff.
Okay.
But I was
which is cool. Now you're allowed to be.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
Look at some of the biggest earners online, or streamers and gamers, and
But I mean, so like playing EverQuest, got into that a little bit, and that got me into web development because people were buying the game currency. Mm-hmm. And so we're getting soaked out on our eyes. We're all like squinting.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that wind change was a little brutal.
But people were buying the currency, so I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I remember getting an item in the game, and I sold it to some guy on eBay for $70. That's amazing. I'm playing this game, and I don't need this, and somebody's going to buy it for $70. And then I developed a website. Just started looking into it. What would it take to build this? I built a website that was like a PHP forum where people could post their guides and stuff, and you could subscribe for $5. Okay. And so that was kind of the first thing. And then the currency thing came into play after that, once I got that like baseline experience, and started a company called, well, not a company, it's just buying a domain and buy game currency, and where you would go and you could compare prices across all the suppliers and get the cheapest price. Mm-hmm. And so I did that and made some decent money. Okay. Like without doing anything, I would wake up and get a commission. So I was affiliated with all these sites that sold the currency. Okay. And I would get 10 to 20%. And then people started reaching out to me and saying, like, if you put us at the top of the results of like where you can buy World of Warcraft gold, we'll give you 20% commission. Okay. So, and then people were buying like $1,000 worth. And I remember one time getting a $750 commission off of one purchase. And I'm just like, what the hell? Like, who the hell's buying that, first of all? But that was awesome.
Yeah, I know some Warcraft items and things like that really went for some insane amount of money.
Yeah. So that was a fun experience. And that was like starting to dabble into when I was starting college. Okay. And so it was just kind of like, what can you do? Online's interesting. And then, but yeah, that was before the whole BreathAdvisor thing and the
Love the name, by the way, BreathAdvisor.
Yeah, I remember I had a
Like
professor, he was adjunct professor. And those are kind of the best at college. Like the guys that come in that have had, they built a business or something and they just want to teach. They have real world experience. And his name was Bob Hayworth. And I remember like meeting with him one on one about the idea, kind of saying some names too. I had Buzzbox.
okay. I kind of like Buzzbox.
Yeah. And then he like there's a couple other ones. Breath Assessor was another one. But then BreathAdvisor came about and the domain was available. I was like, hell yeah. I still got that domain.
Okay.
I think the site's still up actually. But yeah, going back into that, man, I got the kiosks. And then, like after that it was.
Well, let's take it back real quick. So you hit on something I found interesting is you were talking about your family and you were talking about your parents and your father being a carpenter, right? For the school system, it sounds like, right?
Yeah.
And that, it wasn't like money was flowing, but you had what you needed. You had a good life and good upbringing. But there was a part in there where you were kind of reflecting on that when you wanted the paintball gun. So you did the opportunity of mowing the lawns to earn that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like that whole notion of the idea where your parents took care of what you needed, but you also understood like there were opportunities for you to do things. And
yeah.
Also, it sounds like part of you didn't want to be that way, where you wanted to find a way to where you didn't have to. Do you cut coupons now?
Yeah, no.
No. So I kind of got the impression
that pisses my parents off too, because there's certain things where I'm like, that's like,
it seems like you made a conscious decision and said to yourself, like, I know I could do well enough to where I don't need to cut coupons, and like, here's something I could start with. Here's how I can earn this prize.
Yeah,
at a young age.
Yeah, it's like you got your birthday or Christmas is kind of when you get something. And so if it's out of that window, you got to figure it out. And yeah, that was, I think that was motivating. It was like spring or something, and I wanted that paintball gun, know? So like, okay, that's the option.
And then you had to pay for the paintballs. That's where all the money's at.
Yeah.
Shooting that stuff downfield.
Yeah, you got to buy the mask. You got to do the whole thing. And, yeah, it was fun. But yeah, that was kind of the first thing. It's like,
I just thought it just was interesting how, like, I could, if I'm in your shoes and I'm looking at things that way and you saw that opportunity and you took it and you were successful with it, I'd be saying to myself, like, what else can I do? What else can I do to where, what do I need to do? Like, what do I need to do in life to where I can have these things for myself? And it sounded like taking a gamble, taking a risk with entrepreneurship, starting up businesses. And like you had already mentioned, people are willing to invest money for an education.
Mm-hmm.
And you're willing to invest money in a product and a chance. And you look at it as education. Totally. We talked earlier, you kind of talked about that.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing. You'll go, and now it's probably like online courses that people are buying, and, and that's helpful too. But like when it comes to, okay, I want to buy a prototype of a product, it's going to cost me, even for like something small, like a hat or something, like that shit, $300-$400.
Okay.
For one prototype.
Yeah.
Cause you gotta pay for the mold for your logo and all this stuff. And, but they're not willing to do it. Like that's too much. And, it's like such a learning experience just to get started. And then, figuring out, and I don't know, maybe people don't see it as exciting, but I see it as exciting and kind of like, something worth it. That's where I've learned the most, is just jumping in.
Okay.
And figuring it out,
So at a young age in high school, you got involved with the currency exchange for online gaming.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What were you, like 15, 16? Where were you at that stage?
No, I was probably like 17, 18.
17, 18? Okay.
I'm about to graduate.
So senior in high school, still in high school, and you found success with that. Where did you learn your skill set for programming and web design and development? Was that from school or self-taught or?
No, it's kind of self-taught. You just kind of figure out, and it was interesting to me too. Oh, yeah. Like I remember playing video games too, where, you got your like clan or your guild, and then figuring out how to build a cool website for your guild.
Okay.
And so that was kind of like the HTML and CSS. And then it was like, well, how do I pull pricing data from these sources, you know?
Yeah.
And so, I need a programming language, and it was PHP. I hate PHP. Going back to that, but, yeah, that was like kind of the start of it. And then you just kind of realize, and I had an uncle too, who was, he was a programmer for a banker. And, so I remember I commissioned him to help me build like some more scrapers for these sites and he was old school. So it was like, you download the internet to your desktop, and then you process the data, then you change all the files, and you re-upload them to your server. It was like not like a PHP thing, or like it was complicated.
So scrapers, you're saying that's what pulls the data from various sites in.
Yeah, because I was doing the price comparison thing.
Okay.
And that was kind of a learning experience too. I bought him a computer for it. And I was like, all right, I need this. And it was kind of fun to connect with him a little bit on it. And yeah, so, it's kind of a learning experience too, where you're like, okay, I have money coming in. Like, how can I make my job easier?
Yeah.
And so commission other people.
What age were you at this?
I think I was like just entering college at that point. Yeah.
So you're paying your uncle to help offset your labor hours as a freshman in college.
Yeah. I remember my uncle liked to talk too. So it was like, if there's an issue, I got to get on the phone. It's going to be 2-hour conversation. Even a small issue. So I was like, I got to save up some issues. I like talking to him, but damn.
We were in school. We were talking about the breathalyzer.
Yeah.
And then, so where'd you go from there? So you had the opportunity, you tried going through that. Obviously that wasn't successful. You still have the website up though. So you have to check that out.
Yeah.
Try and find that.
Yeah. BreathAdvisor.com. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen with that too. We got a grant from the state of Utah. They gave us $40,000. Part of that was we had to spend money with a local school. And so we were developing a straw dispenser that was automatic, because one of our biggest things was we got to go refill straws in this machine.
All right.
You would dispense a straw.
Ask, like, if you had mouthpieces or what the
it would dispense a straw, and it had to be a certain straw, and then you'd push it in and blow. We're developing so we had to give a portion of that funds to that, and then the rest we use for kiosks. And this time we were like, okay, we kind of, we had our initial round of 10 kiosks at this point. So like, okay, let's backlight them.
You got that. Well, let's go back to that for a minute.
Right.
So you got money, you got another grant, right? From the state.
Yep.
How did you even find out about that? Where did that come from?
That was one of the expos where it was just like, I don't know. We're not, I'm too cheap to pay for anything. And so, but we got invited to come to some expo, like Entrepreneur Expo or something, and we had the kiosk up there. And a guy named Rob Coons came by and said, could you guys use another $40,000? I'm like, let's talk. And I had Sebastian Hooker. He's a good friend of mine. I'm involved in another business with him right now.
Okay.
But this is kind of our first soiree into working together. And he was manning the kiosk at the time. And he kind of brought it to me, and then I met this guy, Rob Coons, and he's like, I'm on the state something economic development. And so come pitch your product to us, and, it's like to spur jobs and support entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And so I remember, like, the kiosk weighed fucking 80 pounds. Oh. And I had my dad, he laid carpet on the back, so it looked kind of professional. And then it was a board that we mounted the kiosk to, and then we put it on an art easel.
Okay.
Fucking art easel.
Did it collapse?
No, but I remember, like, Sebastian, like, I can't be sweating in there, so you got to carry it. And he's walking around. It was at the gateway.
Okay.
And so
you talked about earlier too, when you get in those boardrooms, those
like I got to get in the zone a little bit.
Okay.
And so I'm like, dude, I can't be like huffing and puffing a kiosk in there. You got to do it. And I have a picture of him, and he's just got the kiosk on the artboard. You can barely see over it, just walking it. And so we pitched it to the, I can't fully remember what the thing was called, but they gave us a grant for 40 grand. And then we started like, okay, we have to develop something with the school. And the straw thing was interesting because people could just slap straws out of it.
Uh-huh.
And so we're like, have an automatic, like you pay, dispenses a straw.
Okay.
And probably not like, it's not the top priority that I would have chose, but we need something that engineering students go into. And so we started developing that. And that was at Weber State. And so we had all these prototypes of this, like, looked like a revolver gun, but it was with straws.
Okay.
So it would grab a straw and then rotate through. And it was interesting, that guy that was working on it, then he died in a paragliding accident.
No way.
And so, like, we kind of had to, like, what do we do there? Don't really know what the rules are. And then, just kind of move forward at that point. Like, it was kind of a weird situation.
Yeah.
What do you do?
That's rare.
Yeah. And so we continued on, got that grant, ordered 20 kiosks. And now they're backlit with the LEDs. So it's like more prominent in the bar. You can see a breathalyzer kiosk and it's got like a red. Oh, that was when, what's that kiosk or the music box?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's that called?
Isn't it music box?
Yeah, whatever. It's like a giant Touch Tunes.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Touch
the one that you
Tunes.
could play. It also had an app too. You could play.
Yeah. So Touch Tunes coming out with their
new.
new Touch Tunes where it had LEDs behind them. I'm like, okay, we're doing that for the breathalyzer. Okay. So we got that going, ordered them all in. At that time, I got Justin, a good buddy of mine who we played EverQuest together.
Okay.
And so it's kind of weird how things connect.
Yeah, you got your, like guild going on there.
Yeah. And he was just a brilliant kid. And he did some things too where he automated EverQuest so it would make all his money, and he did some cool stuff, and he's just a smart dude. And so he was the one that kind of like took BreathAdvisor to another level on the tech side.
Okay.
So we had the back end where it was serving ads to each kiosk. We could program it so we could upload ads to a server and then be like, okay, we want a Coors Light ad at these bars, like they're paying for it. That was our monetization plan.
Okay.
The money, like it was $2 to use it.
Well, the thing that's interesting about it is that you say that it would call a cab. I'm imagining that now if you had to deal with Uber or Lyft.
It was right when Twilio came out. And so we were like, okay, we can integrate it. So it was interesting. Like I went and had, oh man, there's so many stories with BreathAdvisor. It's like we went and I met with UCab, and you're going to a weird ass shop to meet with these guys. And so it's like the head dude at UCab, and meet with him. He's like, okay, we'll do it. Cause our pitch was like, it'll call you and it'll be a robot that says this is a cab request from a BreathAdvisor kiosk for 3 patrons at, Zest Bar downtown. This is the address. Repeat if you want to, or press 1 to confirm.
Okay.
So they press 1 to confirm. The user gets a text. Cab's on the way. So that was like, okay, this is interesting because it's a pain in the ass to call a cab in a bar when it's loud.
Well, so there's also some background to this in regard to Utah. Like I came from Chicago.
Oh yeah.
When I moved out here around that time, basically. But you could walk out and get a cab, no problem. When I came to Utah, I was downtown having some drinks, hanging out. I went to flag down a cab, and people were losing their mind.
Yeah, you don't flag them. Yeah.
So you can't.
You got to call them. Yeah.
You had to call them. So this was actually. It seems almost like something where if you're in Chicago or whatever, it's like, what's the big deal? You just walk outside and get a cab.
Yeah.
That's not how it works in Utah.
Right. Yeah.
So that was super advantageous.
Yeah. So it was interesting, and then you would get the kiosk for free. So if you paid for it, you swipe your card or whatever. We had promo cards made too, so we'd hand them out and you get 3 free swipes.
Okay.
But you would it wouldn't charge you if you requested a cab after. Okay. So we get a kickback from the cab companies.
Yeah.
And so that worked. And then Yellow Cab, I remember pitching to them, and it was me and Sebastian. We went in there, and again, it looked like you're meeting with a foreman or something. Okay. Just like that kind of shop. The dude fucking fell asleep while we were talking. And I think his daughter was in there with him. Like, and I just remember looking at her and she's like, I mean, the guy was like 90 years old and trying to explain to him, but we got it working with Yellow Cab anyway, like despite him falling asleep. But yeah, so that was kind of our pitch. And then Uber and Lyft came out about.
Okay.
And so it was like, oh shit, what are we going to do about that? And at the same time, I don't know why breathalyzer kiosks were a hot space, but we had Intox Box that was based out of Minnesota. And then for some random reason, another competitor popped up in Park City.
Okay.
And called Breathe Legal. And I remember the owner.
That's a lame name.
Yeah, I remember the owner called me. They had money though.
Well, yeah.
And
that makes up for a lot of stuff. Yeah, I guess. Marketing, right?
Yeah. I remember the owner called me. And, every time I was working at Westminster.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd get a call and then I'd have to run out the side door and like go walking along the track or whatever. And he called me and I figured out who he was, but he kind of was just like scoping for information.
Okay.
And it kind of like just put a bad taste in my mouth. And so I wasn't super friendly with them. But they had a lot of money too, which kind of pissed me off. But their whole business model was a franchise.
Okay.
So they're selling people on the idea that you can own a territory and purchase these kiosks and make a ton of money.
Okay.
And I'm sitting here like, these kiosks all in with the $800 breathalyzer that I'm kind of getting at the better price now, but it's still like, it's got to be fuel cell, not semiconductor. Okay. There's all this shit we can get into on it, but
yeah.
I wanted to top the line. So you're doing the same. It's got to be calibrated every 30 days. So it's the same as the police.
A lot of work, a lot of maintenance.
A lot of maintenance. That was a whole other thing,
Yeah.
And so,
I mean, reloading, you got to reload the straws. Now you got to calibrate every 30 days.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What else did you have going on with those? Those were like almost like a vending machine.
Yeah. And I'd have my dad come around and install them with me.
What's your uncle up to? He was helping you out last time.
Yeah, no, he was out at that point, you know.
Okay.
And so now it was my dad, and I got him a BreathAdvisor hoodie, and he'd help me go and install them. He had the hoodies going on, and but yeah, it was a lot of work for not much reward.
Okay.
But we had an app where, and I would check it. I remember checking on the weekends, and I could see all the kiosks and how much money they're doing, and I'd be like, oh, nice, that one did $18, So, but I could also remote into them and see people using them when I'm at home, and so it was like kind of fun to watch. And if there's any issues, I could BNC into it and be like, oh, fix it, whatever. But yeah, it was just it was a whole ordeal, but it was fun. But hardware is very difficult.
So it was obviously just a small run. You had 20 units. Was there something in regard to liability with that? Like
yeah.
if it didn't show the correct, what they should have blown, like if your machine was miscalibrated?
Yeah. You never want to suggest people can drive if they drink anything, right?
Okay.
So it would always like pop up, request a cab if we register any alcohol. Okay. And obviously people use it as a game. Who can blow the highest,
Okay. All right.
And I wasn't necessarily against that.
I didn't even think of this whole time. I didn't even think of that, but it
was a blast.
Genius.
I mean, and I was throwing house parties all the time. So I had the kiosk at my house.
Okay.
You had bets on over under on, everybody would guess what you're at.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was,
we go from being smoke inhalated to literally being lit on fire.
Yeah. So
I still think this is a great idea. Fireside.
I like it.
Yeah. We just got to control the wind a little better. So yeah, playing the college game, right? Seeing who could blow the highest. That's ingenious.
Yeah,
that should have been your marketing push and campaign the whole time.
It was funny. Like when I was bored at home, sometimes I'd just log in and see if people are using it, and then I could see them walk through the whole thing. And we had it dialed in. It was a good experience, through the whole thing. It was fun. And even when Uber and Lyft came out, it was, can we integrate with them? We could show where the Uber and Lyfts are on the kiosk, and they have APIs and stuff we could do. And then we were pitching to Miller Coors to get an advertising contract. And we had miscellaneous, realtor here and there. We had the Wasatch Brew Pub up in Park City.
Nice.
So we had some good locations. And I think we had about 20 locations. And, it was just like, okay, $500 contract here and there, and it was.
And so, what were you doing? Just outfitting the machine with their logo or something like that?
No, it was a big screen on it, a 19-inch screen, and so we would just when it wasn't being used, it would rotate through advertisements. But then we had also advertisements when people are using it. So like as it's analyzing your breath, it'll show an ad.
Okay.
As it's as you're seeing the results, it'll have a different ad space here.
So
So
was
we had,
that actually, did you charge more for that because you literally have a captive
oh man,
audience then?
I would hook anybody up that if they were down, I was like, yeah, we'll design it, we'll do it,
Okay.
and we'll. You got
Yeah.
to bend over backwards for those initial ones, and then we had Miller Coors, and that took about a year to go through their legal and drink responsibly. I was thinking like it's brilliant, like your drink responsibly campaigns. You
Yeah.
have a budget for that. This is perfect, but it's scary because people are blowing and then you're insinuating, or they might be using it as a game to get higher,
Right.
So there was some shit we had to go through with that. And then we finally got Miller Coors like a year later. At that point, we're kind of moving on, we're like, it's $2,000 a machine. Maintenance is going around and doing it.
Straws aren't cheap.
And
Had to move over to paper.
it's funny with the other company too. Like I said, they had money and they went and hired a lobbyist to push it. And I was on like news channels for St. Patty's Day and stuff like that, where they would, and I'm terrified of that shit. I don't like it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's a bill now where they're trying to enforce all bars in Utah to have a breathalyzer.
Oh, wow.
And so I remember like articles came out, the newspaper, and it was just like, seeing the comment section, like BreathAdvisor and his holy brethren or whatever, and I'm not religious. So it's just like, they thought I was some like big Mormon dude. And I wasn't anything involved with the law. I was moving on from the business at this point.
So you almost got pushed back because of what was created from that.
But it was awesome because
Well, what do they
when
say?
people
There's no
thought about
bad
it,
PR, right?
yeah, well, they thought about it, and the breathalyzer they knew was BreathAdvisor. It wasn't Breathe Legal.
Breathe Legal is a terrible name to say.
Yeah, well, they had models. They were doing all sorts of stuff. They had like a limousine with Breathe Legal on it.
So it didn't. Long story short, it imploded. They passed the legislation, though. You think that would be?
They did not pass it. They did not pass it. But what they did pass was, okay, you have to, if these machines are in bars, you have to calibrate them every 30 days.
Okay.
And like I said, like it was good PR for BreathAdvisor. More work on us, but like really it didn't. Like, okay, you now have to calibrate the kiosks every 30 days. And we were already doing that anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just, like to scale that business would be really difficult. So hardware is hard.
So that was the big thing, is that the scaling was, I was going to say, what was the exit then? Because this sounds like something pretty good at a time when it became a hot button, especially when it gets in state legislation. You start getting free publicity, advertisement. You obviously have a superior name, so then people would associate it with a superior product. Why'd you transition out?
I tried to sell the company.
Good time to sell it.
Yeah, and the company in Minnesota was interested in buying it, and they manufactured all their kiosks in the States, and the person that was the main investor had a manufacturing plant that built kiosks.
Okay.
And so I talked to him. I remember my price point was $500,000, and I don't think he was getting the return the market. I mean, obviously nobody was, because they're all gone.
Yeah.
And so it didn't happen. So I still own it, and I still have a shitload of kiosks in my garage.
Really?
Yeah,
You should have brought one tonight, man.
So
That would have been great.
I don't know what to do with them, but yeah, I mean, that's part of the live and learn,
Yeah.
Um,
So, okay. All right. That wraps up. So you go from an idea in college, a college competition, to a viable business that you tried to sell for $500,000, which it kind of fell through, but there was a potential there. And now you ended up with just the units and the machines. But going back to the $800 investment. So an $800 investment took you to the potential to have a $500,000 in sales, essentially.
yeah. And think about how much I learned throughout that whole process, though.
I just learned a ton from listening to you talk about that.
Just stumbled upon, like, you take it one step at a time. You get into different experiences that you're never gonna, and that's what college is supposed to emulate, but it can't. It can't to a certain level. It doesn't know the path you want to take. So you got to take some initiative and investment and do it on your own, and you never know where it'll lead you, you know?
Yeah, obviously universities and in particular bachelor's degrees used to have an immense amount of power or cachet that it
Yeah, in
associated
the
with
job market. Yeah.
right. And we've obviously seen that diminish with what the universities have decided to do and give different degrees for. So they don't carry as much weight.
Mm-hmm.
People immediately come and say, okay, well, what's your experience? What's your work experience? Where it used to be much more coveted and respected, where now it's like those people enter the workforce and they're being offered a starting position
Yeah.
with the opportunity, like, okay, if you do well in this, then we know you have the degree and you've shown the work that it takes to achieve a degree.
Yep.
So there's a level of respect that comes from there. So you could be fast tracked, but the personal investment side isn't as great as what it used to be potentially, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, talking to people, like, I don't know when I've last, even somebody sends me a resume, I'm like, that's, I don't really, I check it out, but it's not like, I want to talk to them. I
Yeah.
want to know what their experience is.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know what they've been through. And, I mean, even just recently, brought on a social media manager, and it wasn't about like, I don't even know, a degree like communications or something, but, didn't look at any of that. It was just what he's done. And he started his own brand, he had an optic brand. I love people that have tried, or, just shown the initiative of starting their own thing. There's so many people that feel like, I don't know, like this might be hard to say, but, people overcomplicate their jobs and get too locked into that.
Okay.
And they think that they like carry the weight of the business in a lot of ways because they're siloed in that.
Okay.
And they're great at what they do, but they don't understand how it provides their income, essentially. Like realistically, like you're making 150 grand. Are you providing that value, at least 1.2 times that value? Because that's really what the employer's paying to the business. And so, like, I think that perspective.
And even then, that's just a break even, right? I mean,
Yeah, that's
if
just
you're an
break even.
employer, you'd be foolish to pay someone exactly what they're bringing in.
Well, no, I mean that's like that's a decent case scenario right now. It's like, and I think capital the last decade has been, well, not the last decade, I should say, minus the last like 4 years, but before 2020, it was pretty easy to come by. And the strategy was, the acquisitions. You don't have to build a profitable business. You have to, well, like early 2010 and 2015 was probably hire a talented engineering team.
Okay.
And that's at least an acqui-hire. And then it was, you have a SaaS business. That's another multiple on it.
What's a SaaS business?
Software as a service. So,
okay. Yeah.
So like majority of companies, everybody wants to be a SaaS business because, I'm going to get 20x multiple on revenue or whatever it is, or income.
Well, once you build the foundation, then you're selling like a point of sale operating system. Is that what you're referring to, or what exactly are you referring to?
Yeah, maybe a system like that, like software that runs it, and so it's not,
once you've built it, it's done. Now it's just getting into
and it's never done. It's never like built it and you're done. Obviously it's
a lot of
tons of shit going into that, but, it was, how can we get acquired by a company with more capital, and capital is easy to come by. And so our valuation, our investors get a return on their investment.
Okay.
And we're good. Now we're driving Lambos, It's not the traditional, hey, let's build a business that makes money. It's like, let's build something that could potentially make a lot of money in the right hands, like with a distribution model. So you're building businesses for acquisition. Okay. That's the purpose.
As opposed to building your kind of traditional business model where you're hoping to get 10% return on the bottom line.
Well, I think, it's like you go back 100 years ago, without the internet and everything, you build a business to make fucking money and supply your family with the necessities.
Yeah.
And hopefully, if you're taking the risk of starting that business, you get a little more reward. And, you're taking care of your people and all that. And now it's like kind of different where, it's more about the stock. We're going to go public. And so we're going to go in the whole, like, look at Amazon.
Okay.
Amazon's on top now, but they weren't making profit forever. And so it's like,
I still don't understand how used books blew up into what it did. But
well, and I think Jeff Bezos, like, he came from a hedge fund, like, he fucking understood that shit and played it. And the times are changing now to where, I don't know. I think it's going to get really rough. Like, AI is coming out. Everybody went into software engineering. That market's saturated. There's so many software engineers still looking for jobs. And everybody's like, no, that's your golden ticket. Learn coding and you're good. And it's now I think it's like being a business owner.
Well, I've messed around with ChatGPT and 4.0, and I've been able to successfully put together like simple games and stuff with it.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about software.
Yeah.
So I've seen what ChatGPT can do.
Mm-hmm.
And now what, we're at 4.0, which is wild. Have you used that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I use it all the time.
Okay.
That's how I like, I mean, if I need money, I'll contract, but, well, that'll bring us to a whole nother era, but,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's just,
well, and then 5's on its way, right? And
you have all these
they're getting closer and closer to this kind of self-aware type integration that they're teasing, right, with 5.
Yeah, who knows what the fuck's going to happen with that? Like, I don't know.
So how much, I guess my question, what I'm leading into is how much, we haven't even got to what, like you talked about, where you're at now. We're still talking about the breathalyzer and whatnot.
Yeah, I know.
Moving on from that. But I mean, how much are you aware of that now? What are the conversations like? And then the exponential rate at which this has grown. I don't think the general public really has an understanding or an idea at the exponential rate in which the capability of the AI that's even available to the public market has grown. And we know just from anything throughout history is what we have in the public sphere in the market is not leading edge, right? The thing that you're working with now in ChatGPT 4 was something that they were probably working on a year and a half ago or a year ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I think everybody, yeah, I don't know. So it's kind of funny because, you're in tech and you make fun of the older people that are like building servers or, hosting their website on their own home computer or something.
Yeah.
Like, why don't you host it in the cloud? Why don't you do that? And it's so obvious. And then I see the same thing where these guys that are programming and have made very comfortable salaries, now AI's coming and they're like, no, that's a joke. That's not producing good enough code to, our standards. And it might not be, but it can accelerate your work, probably 50-60%.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can output so much more, but why do you want to do that? Why do you want to do that as an employee? It's the last thing you want to fucking do.
Yeah.
It's like, you want to make your job easy. And so maybe you're going to do it, but now you got 3 days a week free. But like, companies are noticing. And so that's why you're seeing all these layoffs. Mm-hmm. Everybody's used to playing ping pong and getting all the snacks and everything. And, that's not the case anymore. It's going to be companies that are lean and, have a few key players that can, take that input and decipher into what they need but amplify their work. They're going to be the ones on, and they're probably not going to make that much more, but everybody else is going to be gone because they're not using it.
We've even seen things being offered, courses and degrees in relation to just prompt writing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I got brought into a company. There was this guy, he wanted to start a a fund where he'd fund AI companies. And so he wanted a list of all the AI companies coming out and about. And so I built a scraper that would go out to all these different sites, pull in all the AI tools. And so I mean, this is when I left my last job. You know, I'm looking for contract work to supplement that income. And this is one of those things that came up. And so I built a tool that would go grab and aggregate all these AI tools that are coming out. They're just constantly coming out. And so I built him a database that you can pull, and like he wanted to show it on his fund site and then run some analytics on it and whatever. And his developer like couldn't figure out how to do it, whatever. So he kind of commissioned me further on the project. And then we developed more of a product, and now it's bestofai.com.
Okay.
And so originally it was AI Toolbox, and then we started getting into like, what if we ran contests on the best AI tools for certain categories? And now it's evolved into a course where we're kind of showing the fundamentals of AI.
Okay.
And so
is this for general public, or are you looking specifically for engineers? Or are you looking
No, it's general public. It's kind of like, you know, I think there's different avenues that depending on your career that you'll be interested in. But then we have like a foundational level, and then we're going to start coming off with tracks. So if you're like, you know, focused on social media or something, here's how to automate your content.
Yeah.
Essentially. And produce an AI avatar of Eric, you know.
Well, literally, I mean, we've seen in the social media that we've been involved with and trying to build our channels, we've seen a lot of changes in their algorithm, and specifically trying to eliminate and reduce the influence of AI and AI detectors and needing to disclose what is all involved.
Yeah.
And it's shaking up the social media landscape, because now you have literally like AI chat bots that are producing images and video and providing some of those same kind of services that other influencers were gaining. Like as far as anime and dress up and things like I've seen those already on TikTok. I mean, I know TikTok and Instagram are trying to reduce them, but they're there.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, it's crazy what you can do with it. And the no code tools, and you know, Zapier integrations, and then plug that into chat GPT and then funnel that into another, like, you know, so that's what we're kind of showing. It was like all the shit you can do with that. And it's interesting, and it's not like my main focus. I'm like the quasi CTO of it. But it's, you know, I mean, we got some big names starting to push it. And,
well, also with that, I mean, the most recent update I saw with Macintosh or with Apple software is to integrate ChatGPT on voice command, to where it basically is like working right alongside with you. I've seen where they have educational integration now as well for students. I mean, those are just some of the practical ones that are already in effect.
I mean, what we're doing like with Best of AI right now is I scrape the tools. What I'll do is we get the new tool in, so we have the website. I'll take the website, I'll go to their, you know, that URL, download all the content, then strip all the code out of it. And so I got the text left, and then send it to ChatGPT, summarize this tool, give me a summary of it, give me 3 best use cases of it, and, you know, categorize that in our database. And so like, that's just the crazy shit you can start doing.
Yeah.
Where it's like automated content. And so we're ranking well on search engines, and you can do that with any site, you know? So, yeah, it's just, AI is crazy. It's going to change everything, obviously.
And it's happening so fast. Yeah. A lot of people are completely asleep as to what's happening.
Right. Well, and that's where I'm like, you know, honestly, I feel like if you're not a business owner or thinking in that mindset, you might be fucked. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe there's universal basic income. I know probably what's going to happen is the hands-on jobs are going to go through the roof. That's what everybody wants now. It's going to switch from software engineering. Everybody wants to sit at the computer to, no, I want to be a plumber. I want to be a electrician.
Who could fix my door?
And that's going to be the, you know, like, you don't want to think about it. Before it was you call your buddy, like everybody's kind of different trades, you know, and you have a network of friends that are kind of doing these things. But biggest pain in the ass, your garage spring breaks, you got to call fucking garage spring repair 101.com, you know, and you know you're getting fucked on that deal.
Yeah.
You don't have a friend that like you can trust that's going to
Yeah,
give you
they'll
a
tell you,
decent
oh,
price.
spring is $100. It'll take me give me a
that's
6-pack of beer. We'll get it installed.
That's the
over
one thing
weekend.
my dad has, you know, being a carpenter at school district, he knows somebody for everything. And I'm just like, that's so cool because I would have to Google that. And I know I'm getting like, you know, whoever's paying the highest for their search ad or something.
Yeah.
So,
I YouTube it all the time. That's what I got mine.
yeah. I'll try that sometimes.
I mean, I grew up with that background. So like in where I grew up in Ohio, the Midwest, they call it, it was like, if you wanted an oil change, you changed your oil. If you wanted to replace your radiator, you did your radiator. If you wanted to remodel your kitchen, you remodeled your kitchen. So that's one thing that at the time when I was a teenager and I was basically my dad's assistant for everything. Now, like how the things that I can handle in my own personal life, I'm very grateful for, because there's a lot of people who grew up just in a generation right after me that have no concept of how to handle those things.
I think that's interesting you bring that up too, because my dad, same way. Like I remember in high school,
being a carpenter, I'd hope you'd hook up with some skills.
No, it was in high school. It was like, okay, now, no, your summers are different now, and you're gonna, you know, I can get you a job at the school district and as like an assistant or whatever. And so I remember one summer I was doing, tile setting. I was doing plumbing, carpentry work, and I was like the skinniest kid. So they'd shove me up in the attic of West High School. And I was just like, Jesus, I'd be the one running the lights or whatever.
Yeah.
In the attic. And I was like, okay, yeah, it would be a dream to work at a computer. You know, that's what I wanted to do.
It's funny you say that, because like one of the best jobs that I ever had was working for the school system, and I was a weed whacker. I would go around all summer. This was in between my semesters in college, like during the summers, you know, the summer period. And I would go in a van with like 3 other guys, and we'd go weed whack the schools.
Yeah.
And we were on a regular rotation because of the rate in which the grass grew, and they had so many elementary schools and junior highs and high school.
Yeah.
And I would go home. Oh, it was the best. I would go in early in the morning. We'd do our thing. We'd just go weed whack all day. My hands would be vibrating all the time from holding a weed whacker for 6 hours a day. But then, you know, I'd go to the gym afterwards, go home and eat. I was like the happiest I'd ever been. And it was also too that accomplishment when you see stuff, when you work on things, when you kind of figure out.
It's like when you mow your lawn and it's looking good, you're like, oh shit, yeah. Immediate gratification.
The thing that's funny with the evolution of kind of the industrial aspect, or the integration of technology that I've noticed, is initially I remember growing up as a kid, and it was the threat to the auto workers, and it was a threat to the manual labor. And it was, we have robotics that are going to take over and do these things. And it did eventually, right? You see, people aren't painting cars anymore. They have the dip process or different processes they use, robotic arms that move the frames, and the technology advancement. And then people figured it out. There were still manual labor jobs. There were still needs to fill, right? As we grew in a populace, we still had needs to fill, and we were able to support a lot of it. And then now in turn, you see this advancement with the other aspect of technology, which they previously thought was an aspect that couldn't be touched, which was more the intelligence or the white collar positions.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And now we see the white collar position under that same transference. But the problem that I see is a lot of the individuals in that, like you described, don't understand it's happening. And they're going to be left out here very shortly, in a short period of time. You've got to look at it. If you have a viable product, like what ChatGPT or these open AIs or what they're going into, you have to understand in a year's time or so, because it's just accelerating so much quicker.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't require as much raw material and time to process and put a machinery together to build a new car factory. Whereas you can implement this overnight as soon as it's launched.
And if you don't know how, you can start talking to that thing.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and figure it out. And just point you in the right direction, whereas somebody else would have to do a bunch of research. Now it's like, you know, you can just get that info. And my personal experience is, I still feel like I'm in college, but then, you know, you look in the mirror like, holy shit. Time goes by way quicker the older you get. And we're all going to be the old guy one day and resistant to change, maybe. But that's what I'm seeing is like these guys that were formerly or previously the disruptors are now the old outdated guys, and they're resistant to change.
Yeah.
And that's going to bite them in the ass. You know, it's like, but I today, I mean, I'm looking for warehouse space for Sway. And so I went and checked out my dad. He knows a guy that builds hot rods in North Salt Lake. And so we went and checked out a spot. And what he's doing now is doing that, but also teaching at Highland High School, the welding program.
Okay.
And so he kind of went in there and related to the kids and brought it up to like, you know, you can hook a boat motor up to a go-kart, you know, and put a water supply and do whatever, you know, just like interesting stuff where it gets them inspired. But the what do you call it? Superintendents, they want to shut all that down, like the woodworking, and nobody's going to be working with their hands anymore. And it's the exact opposite. Like
that's the movement.
That's going to be like, you know, I mean, it's hard work. You gotta show up to a spot. Like you can't just be like waking up in the morning, checking your email and responding to certain things and doing whatever. Like you got to show up to the office. You got to show up to the factory. You got to show up to whatever. But those are going to be the high paid jobs, I think, in the next 20.
Well, it's also a skill set that's learned through practice and refinement.
Yeah. And it's an art. Everything's
right.
an art.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was getting at. The refinement aspect. It is much more of an art. And there's definitely a difference when someone's proficient carpenter versus someone who's raw and new. And you can see the difference in the joists, in the connection, in the stability of the product,
Yeah.
the quality of the product. And then I could see where that would become that much more valuable, especially during this interim while you go through that.
Just like anything else, just like, you know, starting a business, or it kind of is an art. Like, and you have to make mistakes. All those guys that are great welders or carpenters or electricians, you know, they've been shocked. They've been, you know, slammed their finger with a hammer, and you got to do that. Like, that's just part of human, you know. AI is going to change that too, where it's kind of weird because we got to be, you know, born and trained. And you can, like, it's kind of weird. Like, humans take a long time to train up to, like, viable producing, you know, things, where like dogs can get there pretty quick, you know, like be trained on treats. And it's weird how people age and mature, but like an AI machine, it's always got that context. And you spin up a new server, it's got that context now. It's like, doesn't need to be retrained.
Yeah.
Where, yeah, like, you know, there's no, I don't know. That's where I think it's crazy.
Where it's effectively carrying the lessons of its predecessor with it when it comes into that.
Yeah. Like, whereas you try and, you know, give your learnings to your kids or whatever, but AI
that's done with Sundays in the garage as opposed to instantaneously.
Right.
So the timeline for that is exponentially.
Yeah. It's just insane. Like,
or shorter.
Oh man, that's kind of scary maybe, but kind of amazing. And imagine your kids growing up now where they can just talk to something and every question they have will be answered with, I don't know about factual data, but data backing it up. Yeah, it's just going to get insane.
Well, and that's why I've seen the drive in people, and in particular social media. You start seeing this popping up, the idea of homesteading, the idea of self-reliance, the idea of, if you don't have the power grid and if you don't have the computer, if you don't have access to this, what do you have?
Yeah.
And I see a lot more what you mentioned earlier about paid courses and social media influencers gaining ground on items like that, where it's like people are taking an interest in those basic skills that have kind of been lost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how did you get going forward? So we're done with the breathalyzer, and what did you transition into from, so you got out of that because you realized the breath analyzer wasn't the golden ticket that you hoped it would be.
Yeah.
So where did you go to from there? What were you working on? You said you were transitioning out before it really fell apart.
Yeah. So I was still at Westminster at that time. And then, like I said, they were super supportive and like pushing me and like bringing me to their events. And so we'd have breathalyzers there and all that stuff. But it was awesome. I learned so much from that though. And that maybe that like, I'm talking about a little bit of reward. So you repeat the action.
Gotcha.
And got education reward from that. I learned so much, met so many awesome people from that. And I think that was just from, showing ambition. And that was a, interesting thing that happened. And then I came across a company called Ardusat that built small CubeSats, they're called satellites.
Okay.
And SpaceX was coming up.
Okay. Yeah. So we got to make some adjustments because of the fire. When you do a live fireside chat and the wind comes into play, if you've noticed, we've gotten smoked out or we've gotten lit on fire at various points.
Yeah.
But we're toughing through it because this is a great forum. It is just such a comfortable forum to sit in front of a fire. Again, there's just something mesmerizing about it. And that also kind of disarms you a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
All right. So we were going into the satellite.
Yeah. So I'll kind of go over that quick. There was a big company in Utah, Instructure, and one of the original employees broke off and started this company.
Okay.
And so Instructure with Westminster, we utilized Instructure for our learning management software. And it was interesting. And so I went there. They were under 6 employees, I think, and ended up getting the job. And I was terrified because I'd worked at Westminster for 10 years.
Yeah.
But BreathAdvisor is kind of like, not going to pull through. I gotten a lot of publicity for it, and it was kind of tail between my legs a little bit.
Well, just real quickly, it's interesting because earlier you had talked about your interest in a candidate for the current positions you're looking to fill within your company now.
Mm-hmm.
Had a lot to do with not necessarily, it was more so like what they did, and that's almost your story. Right. You were loyal to Westminster while you worked there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't necessarily about the revenue. It was about the experience, the exposure, the people you're working with, the richness you said you felt from working there. While on the side, you did pursue other opportunities as well.
I think that was the most appealing thing.
And so you're also kind of, when you evaluate candidates, it sounds like you maybe want to gravitate towards some of those people because you understand like what kind of experience that brings.
Oh man, that just spurred another thing that, so real quick, I'll just mention it. I built an app while I was at Westminster. This was post BreathAdvisor. BreathAdvisor is still kind of doing its thing, but I built another thing, where back in the day, Twitter data and Instagram data, it had a lot of information to it, and they had open APIs.
Okay.
And so I had built an app where you could draw a circle on an area and see all the Instagrams and tweets that were coming from that location.
Okay. So like area, you mean like a geographical map?
Totally. Yeah. It was like Google Maps, and then you would literally just draw a circle and you would see all the Instagram posts from that or whatever it was, tweets. And so I was just kind of experimenting with it. And at the same time, I was using it for BreathAdvisor because we'd go to the nightclub and bar show, which is a conference in Vegas.
Okay.
A whole nother story about how I got in there with, I pitched it to all so I'm not going to spend $5,000 on a expo slot.
Okay.
But I told them they could advertise their products and their liquors, beers, whatever on our kiosk, and it would draw an audience.
Okay.
And so we had essentially 3 locations at the expo center.
You got sponsored into the expo center?
Yeah, for free.
That's
genius. And then everybody that was going to their booths would ask like, who does the kiosk? And they ended up asking like, can we have your card so we can just hand them to the people?
Yeah.
So it was awesome. But that was a little guerrilla marketing hack. but yeah, so I'd do it around that area and then like follow and engage in the conversations or whatever of people that, it wasn't just about hashtags, it was about geolocation. So if everybody's at the conference, they're kind of in that market.
Yeah.
I remember talking to a guy, I think he worked at KSL, and he was like, this is huge for news, and then it was around that time where the Paris shootings happened. And so I went to Paris and drew a circle over and saw all the raw organic footage that people are posting about the shooting. And it was like super interesting. The only thing I didn't like about the business was I'm reliant on third-party APIs.
Okay.
And, so I was like, there's something here, but it's like these guys are holding me by the balls. My whole business is gone if they change their APIs or restrict certain data. And then a company came out called Geophedia that raised $18 million, based out of Chicago. They did the same thing. And I was just like, God damn it. Like, this is where I'm too afraid to take big steps and want to do that. But it played out like I thought it would, where, privacy laws came in. These guys, Geophedia, started selling that data to law enforcement. And so they could use that data to whatever, Facebook, Twitter, all those guys shut them down.
Okay.
They're, just cut off. And so
when was this timeline?
Probably like 2014.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Geophedia is no more. And that's where, like, I want to be sure, like, if I'm taking investment or somebody's money, I have a path to success. It's not on speculation or certain thing. It's always on speculation in a certain sense, but you got to have a plan. And if you see a flaw in that plan where your business is cut off, how could you take somebody else's money and really pursue that? But people are willing to invest in that too. And so that's where I'm like,
sometimes they're willing to take the risk.
Yeah. And it might be worth it, like, or they might pay off
bucks to get the lobby.
I'm not, it's like, I wouldn't with my money. Yeah. So how can I ask somebody else for theirs? That's kind of my mantra. And I'm glad I had that mantra, and I still do, I think, with this. It's like, I got to see a path for it and to go forward, because my money, I can risk it and lose it. And, I apply it to a learning lesson. Somebody else's money.
Well, you look at these as these financial commitments as investments in yourself and your education to what may come further down the road. And that's been the consistent theme you've kind of mentioned.
And it opens up more opportunities, just like college is supposed to for you,
Yeah.
You invest in yourself, you try it, you fail. It's okay. You're going to learn a shit ton along the way.
And the connections you make, obviously, right?
The connections you make, obviously you got to make it so you're not like, going to be homeless or something. You got to play within your field. But I think that's like the most valuable investment you can make, and invest in yourself. And that gives you, I don't know, I think the best ROI, even if you don't make immediate returns on it monetarily. There's so many other intangibles that come from it.
Yeah. Well, I think you learned that lesson early on too. I mean, when you went in to go talk with patent lawyers, you ended up with a grant.
Yeah.
For $30,000.
Yeah, that I didn't even know existed. Like, okay, they have this money, they want to, help spur the economy, and didn't work out for them. But it's interesting. So yeah, I can't remember how we got to Geophedia. So leaving Westminster, going to RDSAT, I was terrified. I've been at Westminster for 10 years. They supported my entrepreneurial journey. And now I'm going to RDSAT startup, and went there. And the idea was there was a company called Spire where they were shipping the official CubeSats in SpaceX rockets and Russian rockets and China rockets, whatever. Everything that's going around, they're CubeSats now, collecting all this data. And we were the education arm of that was branching off. And so it was interesting because you're going to provide a tool for students to have access to data in space and photography in space. So it'd be a school program where they can, upload their experiments and see like the UV on certain aspects of the earth and all these different sensors that are on these CubeSats. So we built these Arduinos that had the same sensors, obviously not space grade, but you could have them in the classroom and then eventually upload your experiments to space and get a photograph of the earth where it was, the experiment was conducting.
Wow, that's pretty wild.
So it was cool. I was like, that's amazing, and it was awesome. So I jumped over and, tail between my legs, and I'm not like a full on engineer. And so I was like, this is the real world now. It's not a higher education job. And I was terrified. And I remember working there and I was just so nervous. And I show up and it was a rented office space at Salt Lake Community College.
Okay.
For this startup, and they'd raised $1 million off the bat. I just remember like talk about claustrophobia, but now I'm in that same fucking office all day with 6 other people, and it was literally a closet. Like it was like 5 by 7, like it was fucked up. And but I remember just thinking I have to prove myself and working there till like 1 a.m. and then going home and then showing up again at 8 a.m. And just trying to, and I did that. And I remember them hiring certain other people from big companies. And, you start to realize that, they're all talented people, but, they, I don't know how to say it. Nobody knows what the fuck they're doing.
Okay.
Realistically. And so, it was kind of like, oh shit. And I knew they were making more money than me, from major companies like Twitter and whatever. And, it was kind of a thing. And, the business model wasn't working out with that too. So, I started exploring. I wasn't really exploring, but I met some guy at lunch, and then, we can pay you this and come over here. And,
so you got recruited.
Yeah, I kind of got recruited, but it was also, I started seeing some weaknesses in what we were doing, and weakness factor was on design and user experience for the customer. And I'd built a real cool thing where you could see the satellites on an Earth, and it was like, the orbits of it too.
Okay.
And then dial when you want the experiment to happen. But the problem was transmitting that data to the fucking satellites and then getting it back. They couldn't send a picture back like they'd promised because it was too much data and it would come skewed. And so it was like, it wasn't working out.
It is amazing, like with modern technology and how things work, that we're literally in a form of like almost nearly instant communication, and we're sending signals up, bouncing off a satellite and dropping it in another phone hundreds of miles away or on the other side of the globe.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was just a interesting, learning experience. Like, I think everybody that got hired on there got paid more than me, which was fine. I didn't care about it because I was learning a ton and kind of getting experience in the outside world. I felt, because higher education is kind of a different job, versus corporate. You got to make profit to make your job exist.
Yeah, one's more secure and much more lax. I mean, if you've worked at a university and some of those things, to be fair, it's much more lax.
It totally is. Yeah. And, so yeah, that was kind of it. And then I got recruited to another company and, but to focus on design. And that was interesting to me too.
Design of what?
Their web application.
Okay.
And so, I'm familiar with Photoshop and all those things and design tools, and I can design because I built my own projects. And then I would code them.
Okay.
And I just I think it maybe comes from being too cheap to pay anybody else to do the work for me. So I had to figure it out, and I had the time to figure it out. And so I would just figure out, okay, like design, and that was kind of fun. And then like, how do I put this on a website that other people can see and interact with? And that was super satisfying to see my designs come to that. I'm not going to pay anybody to do that.
Wait, who was this with?
I think it started with the buy game currency thing, actually.
Okay.
Like I was doing design stuff there, and then I would design my own apps, like at Westminster. and designed the kiosk for BreathAdvisor, and then designed the Instagram app where, you know, you could see all the shit.
What was your background in the university? What did you graduate with?
Business, finance, and management.
Okay.
Yes.
So nothing to really do with engineering or design?
No. And I kind of thought about that too, though, is like, you know, I have a passion to learn that on my own. So maybe I'll pay to kind of get the shit. I'm not going to go get a book on finance, you know, and it was valuable. I don't remember a lot of the shit like accounting. I wish I remember that now because that's a huge pain in my ass. Like you hire accountants, but like it's hard to trust them with everything. And so you gotta know it. You gotta know everything a little bit, a little bit of everything. So yeah,
or place a lot of trust in people.
Yeah.
Giving you the best information,
and I feel
which
like
is difficult to do.
You can't, like, I don't place a lot of trust in anyone. Like, you know, realistically, you have to have enough knowledge to go in and audit your own shit. You know, I haven't been burned in a lot of ways, but like I've seen mistakes, like not deliberate mistakes, but mistakes that are, you know, and they probably couldn't have known without the context of the business or something, you know. And so it's just context that provides a different perspective. And if you know enough about this aspect, you can kind of adjust. But like there's a million things I don't know about, and I wish I was like a more organized professional, but like I'm horrible at management. Like the only people I work with is people I don't have to manage. Realistically, I just expect you to like go in and take care of shit. And if you don't, then I don't necessarily want to coach you on how to do that like all the time.
Well, that self-reliance factor and the self-education is a lot of what your background experience. I mean, just listening for your stories and how you've gone through the process, I could see why you'd anticipate or expect other people to be able to do that because that's what you do.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's a fault of mine. You know, and you start to learn that as you grow and experience like corporate life. And there's some people that are great managers and they just want to, you know, in my opinion, they fucking talk too much. And I'm like, I got to get off this call. Like, I don't want to walk through this whole thing, but it's so valuable for certain people to walk through that whole thing. And so that's like Sebastian, you know, the guy I started or I brought on to BreathAdvisor. He's just really good at over communicating, and I'm not. I'm just like, you got it, good. Like let's go and do your best, and we can readjust from there. You know. So that's kind of a weakness of mine that I've identified.
Well, that goes back to more what we've talked about. It's an age-old adage as far as the more you learn, the more you know, the more you realize that you don't know.
100%. Yeah. That's the thing. And that's what I was kind of telling you. Like, I don't really like things like this where you're like, I mean, I like this where we're just having a conversation, but you know, we're
obviously
on a panel.
We're going for a little while now. You got a lot to get out there.
We're on a panel or something, and you're supposed to, you know, it's like I'm still figuring shit out.
Yeah. Well, that's a great mindset to have too, because it keeps you in that mode that it sounds like you've been since you were a teenager, as far as setting up the lawn mowing business for the paintball gun. It's that idea.
Yeah.
Right. And that's interesting, just where that comes from, because some people just don't have it. Well, a lot of people just don't have it. Otherwise, everyone would be fighting with you in the marketplace for a share of the business you're working in now. You'd have a lot more competition. And a lot of times it comes where people just want to be led or fall in line or just get a position to get their needs met, as opposed to seeking more and understanding and self-investment the way you've looked at it over the years. So where are you at now? Let's get into the now. So you've got a few things going on. Obviously, you got Sway going on. So if you can't tell, we've got Sway here. We've got some Sway on. So talk to us a little bit about Sway, and then also some of the other projects that you're currently working with.
Yeah. So, Sway, that was, I mean, with my software background, I wanted to explore the Shopify ecosystem. And, the app marketplace and that kind of thing, and thinking, I could develop an app that's useful to e-commerce companies, but I wanted the perspective of a store owner.
Okay.
And so that's part of the reason, but I needed a product for that, right? So what kind of product could I do? And I wanted a physical product that I could actually see, because I've been selling software forever and you don't visualize it,
Okay.
So
this is a physical product. And you've talked about a lot of times you're developing apps, you're doing software, you're doing integration, and this is a pretty big divergent, no?
totally. Yeah. 100%. And, I've been scared of physical products since BreathAdvisor. Kiosks, it's hard
Yeah,
to
that thing
manage
was 80
physical
pounds
products.
to lug that thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's part of the consideration too, is like storage. But, I wanted to sell a product on a Shopify store so I can understand the store owner's perspective.
Yeah.
And I have a huge head.
Okay.
So I could never find a hat that fit right. And it always pissed me off, so I'm like, okay, well, let's try hats. And it's easy. It's kind of like one size snapback, easy to store. So I started down that process and got a little logo going and did the thing and bought the domain and spun up a store. And it was during the time I had a full-time job. So it was kind of like a side hustle thing. And back in 2018. And, I'm kind of thinking like, okay, these hats are great. I had one Under Armour hat that fit perfect.
Okay.
And so that's what I sent to China to like, all right, this is what I want. And so they did it and it was pretty good. I'm thinking like, all right, this is great. Start a store, put it on social media. You'll be good. And it was obviously way more difficult than that.
I love hearing that, because
Yeah.
I understand, because you're talking 2018, right? For reference.
Yeah.
So we're in 2024.
So then it was like, how do I automate this?
So real quickly though, what kind of experience? So you were working on software to help integrate with the Shopify experience, particularly for store owners, in relation to what? What were you developing?
I didn't know yet, but I wanted an app to the marketplace where it's a SaaS business, right?
To add value to the marketplace for the Shopify owners.
Store owners. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So like some sort of app that would increase conversions or like, have some sort of impact
Where did that
on their
come
store.
from? What, you just saw a need there, or you just thought, oh, this might be fun to do as a side project?
I thought I saw a need in a sense. Well, not necessarily a need, but I saw
because you
demand.
didn't even know what it was going to be yet.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I saw demand in the marketplace where there's an audience. I guess that's what I saw as an audience. I didn't know what the product was, but there's an audience to serve. So how do I figure that out?
Okay.
And so that was kind of it. And then come up with a product, and hats were a thing where I wanted to like, okay, I don't have to order, small, medium, large, extra large shirts or something, like that's kind of more difficult, more inventory. It's probably easier to store than hats. I mean, hats are not bad. Like they can compact pretty good.
Yeah.
But I started that way and then was like, okay, fulfillment center, Amazon, let's do that. So I got my order from China. They look good. Built my store. And that was already kind of enough for me. Like, okay, I have a store, I can sell products, kind of figure out the experience of, applying a Shopify theme and doing this.
And boom, you're off to the races. You could hardly keep up with the orders and you're all
yeah. Then I was like, fuck, okay. So how do I track the audience? And, I started doing that. Okay. Like, just doing a little bit of face, released them yet. So I started talking to him on Instagram because I told him, hit me up and I'll send you one.
Okay.
And he was like a male fashion influencer kind of guy,
Okay.
and then,
That worked out, huh?
yeah, I'm like, give me a call, let's talk about it. And then, I'm fully occupied with, the full-time job. And so I'm like, let's be awesome if we can have somebody that kind of push this, and, get on the phone with him. And he's like, no, this is awesome. I worked for Buckle for 20 years and, I'm in the retail space. And, so yeah, it kind of gave me a little motivation. And then, my buddy Mark introduced me to a guy that runs a private jet company. Just like, bring up a couple hats, And so I brought up a couple. Didn't think anything of it. And then all of a sudden I get hit up by his secretary saying we want to order some custom hats with our logo.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, I can do that, and started out 150 hats. And then we did them, kicked ass. They loved them. And so it just kind of grew from there, like where it's like now they're ordering, 500 to 1,000 at a time. And so that brought my eyes to the corporate business where I can customize hats and do awesome shit for companies that want to promote their own brand, while perfecting my own retail brand. So I kind of went backwards from what the traditional market is like you build a retail brand of, your product, and then companies want to buy it too. I can provide premium quality for companies that want a little step above, a lot of step above the Richardsons.
Your normal hats that you get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That people just throw away or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, is there a market for that? And there was. So that's kind of funded the business. And now we're focusing on retail, which is kind of interesting. We went backwards, corporate first, and then fund the business, and now funnel that into direct to consumer.
It was almost like your test market a little bit, huh?
Yeah, it kind of was like, we had some it just wasn't my focus. And then I left my job at the previous company, and so then I was contracting with them, so I was still doing that, and then Sway on the side, and then just kind of that's what spurred it though. It was like, okay, I can get big orders from corporate customers. I'm going to hit up others, and then that was referring customers too, because other people were seeing their hats and wanted high quality hats that aren't outrageously priced.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was a great avenue.
So you've kind of taken us through this whole journey. I mean, starting off from
it's fucked up.
going from selling or cutting lawns to the breath analyzer to the various tech startups and the opportunities you had, and now you found your passion a little bit with Sway a little bit. So it's almost a culmination of all the skills you picked up, because I know on the back end and the things that you've done in regard to Sway, you've kind of implemented all those lessons you've learned throughout. And really you can go back to starting off with that initial investment in yourself, even with the breathalyzer machine, right?
That's always what it goes back to.
Investment.
I think if there's any key point to this conversation, it's kind of invest in yourself and don't be afraid to. And you're going to lose money. But like, why is that different from spending money at an educational institution? You might especially now, get a bachelor's degree, whatever. What got me to progress forward was the chances I took on myself. It's not like my finance and management. I'm not doing any finance and management. I'm horrible at management.
Well, you talked about wishing you had some more accounting skills, but you said you lose money. It's like you didn't lose, though. You didn't lose because you gained a lot of information from that. You made an investment.
Yeah.
And it was an exchange, for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, even with the hat thing, like I met up with my buddy in New York who, Sebastian, where we had worked together with BreathAdvisor.
Yeah. And
he went to NYU to get his MBA and then worked for Microsoft, so he's working for Microsoft at the time. And I brought him a couple of hats. And my agenda was like, I knew what my agenda was. Like I didn't aspire to create like a massive hat company or anything like that. It was like, I wanted to learn the Shopify ecosystem.
Yeah.
And so he was like, you're making fucking hats? Like, well, that's a waste of talent, you know, like we'd been through all this together. Like I'm high tech, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm making hats, and it's been the most rewarding project I've ever worked on. Like the people you meet, everybody wears a hat, and I can talk to anybody, you know, and just give them a hat, whatever. Every company wants a hat. Like it's just fun. Like,
Yeah.
and that's what I'm finding. I think the most important thing too is like, you know, what I've learned as well is like, it's not a race to raise money or do all that. You got to be smart about the money you raise, and you got to work with people you want to work with, and, build it to be profitable from the beginning. Like, how are you going to make profit on this? You know, not think about how can we be acquired by gorilla in the space. You know, it's like, no, just you can take baby steps and be small about it, and grow from there. And yeah, I think that's where Sway has been too. It's like, no, let's figure out what people want. Like I'm in no rush to make a ton of money on it, and we've just been exceeding customers' expectations, and the corporate orders have been invaluable in creating relationships as well, and getting our brand out there. Honestly, like it's kind of twofold. Like
Yeah.
we get income, but
Well,
we
I'm
also get our
excited to
brand out there.
see where the development of the company comes into the future, and follow up with you and see where you're at. Because I've seen the work that you put in, and I've obviously seen your track record, or listened to the track record of your success, and then obviously witnessed a lot of it personally. But some of the big takeaways I'm taking away from today are investing in yourself.
Yep.
That's a key one. What are some other things that for someone out there who's listening to this, or who's listening to your journey, or who's that 20 something who's getting ready to graduate from school and looking to take the leap like you did into entrepreneurship, or take these risks? What are some of the big takeaways you'd like to have them or you'd like them to walk away from this conversation with?
I think the biggest one is don't be afraid to make mistakes. And the quicker you make mistakes, the quicker you're going to learn. And don't be afraid to invest a little money in yourself. You know, like obviously do it responsibly, but, you know, like think about the things you pay for, and why is it so hard to invest in a prototype or something, you know, and like get you excited about the whole concept of building something yourself. Just start. And, you know, it might inspire you to learn different skills that you didn't think you wanted to learn, but you find very interesting. And like for me, that was like web development, programming. Got into that, and found it fascinating and fun, and saw the potential in it. Yeah, just start. I think that's the biggest thing. Just start. You're going to fuck up. Be okay with it.
Yeah.
Just fuck up. The more you fuck up, the more you're going to learn, and kind of see it that way. And, just one foot in front of the other. That's what I'm doing now. You know, and it's like we talked about perspective before, and how you don't like these, like, I feel like I don't have much to share, but then you think back about when you started, and like, oh, if I could have talked to myself then, I would have called myself a lot of things, you know. But don't like let that get in the way of starting. The quicker you start, the quicker you'll learn things, and you might fail, but that's like a success in its own way, you know. And if you could take that, just keep going with it. It's part of the fun. So,
Well, Jason, I just want to thank you for your time tonight. I mean, I took away a lot from this conversation, just listening to your journey. And it's always fascinating for me to learn how people become inspired and take action to things that I didn't do or go through, and where that comes from, where that drive comes from. And I wish I'd had the opportunity to listen to some of your conversation when I was younger, and take some of that guidance that you just shared right now, and what I would have been able to do with it. So hopefully for someone who sees this in the near future, we'll have that opportunity, and we'll continue on with that guidance. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. Cheers, man.
Oh yeah.
Let's cheers. All right.
Fireside chat.
I like it.
Anyway, SGND podcast, Sway hats, some of the best. I mean, I've been quiet about it the whole time, but I love this thing.
We didn't even talk about the acquisition of the domain. SUAY.com. That's where it's at.
SUAY.com.
Negotiate with a guy in Thailand.
That was a whole nother battle.
Yeah. So for next time.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.